That's pretty bad. I have a quick question from a customer here, kind of related to this. Not exactly with the reviews, but is it possible for a publisher to boost their rankings by asking friends, family members, employees at the paper to click on stories from social media or just Google them and then click on them? Is that something you would recommend or that?
So here's what happened. So Google for years has said, no, click-through data from search results doesn't impact rankings. They're lying. I was at a conference in Seattle, a Moz conference, probably 3 or 4 years ago, and Rand Fishkin, who's the founder of Moz there, was doing a presentation. And that conference, I think, will probably have about 1,500 people. He asked everybody in the room to turn off the Wi-Fi on their phone so that everybody's on a cell signal and do a search for wedding dresses Seattle. And so in the room, maybe 1,000 people actually did it, all showing up from different IP addresses because they're not on the Wi-Fi. And he said, okay, now that you've done that, everybody click on the number 7 result, which was XYZ company, whatever it was. Within 15 or 20 minutes, by the end of his presentation, that business had moved up to the number 1 spot. The next day in the conference, he hadn't asked anybody to click again, that business had dropped back to number 7. So yes, click patterns, popularity of a result affects the rankings, but to stay there, you've got to keep clicking on it, and it's got to be big numbers. So asking, 5 or 10 friends to click on something is not going to move the needle. But the only way to really do it on anything that's very competitive is you need to contract some company offshore to do it. But it's got to be some company who can fake their IP addresses to look like they're in the US, and they've got to be doing it thousands of times a day. And it could be gamed, but it's really, really, really difficult. And you're not going to be able to game the system at the scale you'll be able to do by actually using real people. That make sense?
Yep, that's
Okay.
great. Thank you.
Let's talk about user engagement. So we just talked about that in terms of the regular organics. So that's the 10 blue links underneath the 3-pack in the map and all that. The click-through rates on that matters. And the reason why is if somebody, say somebody has an article about best Thai restaurant in Bend. And so for that search term, best Thai restaurant in Bend, a lot of people click on Noi Thai, and maybe that's the number 7 result. Over a period of a bunch of months, the number 7 result gets way more clicks than the number 3 result. That's a signal to Google that for whatever reason, people like that answer better, or people click through and stay on the site longer and don't bounce back or whatever. Those kind of signals are good signals to Google that is a good answer for whatever the question was that people are typing in. So that does impact rankings. In the 3-pack, it's a little bit different. I would say possibly click patterns in the 3-pack affect ranking. I haven't seen any studies that showed anything very conclusive there. It's a whole pile of data Google's going to have to collect if they want to count that. My thought is they probably will be doing that if they're not doing it now, but I don't really think that they're looking at click-through rates in that 3-pack quite yet. Certainly they affect the regular organic rankings. We talked about that, but I have not seen any study that tests that in the 3-pack and says that that's actually working in the 3-pack. All right, let's go back and look at the search landscape, search results landscape again on desktop. See those top stories there? You get into those by submitting news stories via something called Google Publisher Center. Those top stories are not part of the 10 regular organic results. KTVZ.com at the top is the number 1 organic result. It's not an ad. The Bend Bulletin is number 2 here, but all the stuff in the middle is coming from Google Publisher Center. And as you can imagine, because you've got the images there, it's pretty prominent and pretty compelling. That's going to get a lot of clicks. I would guess that first story from KTVZ with the picture of the woman in the car is probably going to get way more clicks than the number 1 result at the top of the page, because the number 1 result at the top looks boring. It's like, oh, there's a picture, here's a story, or whatever, right?
Right.
So getting into Google Publisher Center is a big deal. You need to do that. Let's look at mobile. This is totally different. So look what shows up here. There's no organic results at the top of the page. So here was the desktop. The other thing with mobile is there's so much less real estate that whatever gets featured right near the top is going to get a ton more clicks than anything that's 2 or 3 scrolls down. Same sign. So this next slide, I've scrolled down a little bit. Now you see those top stories. So the top story there is the same one is showing here in this next block under top stories. So if you're not in the top stories, all of page 1 and page 2 in terms of scrolling pages on mobile is coming from those top stories and the Google Publisher feed. The first organic result here is almost falling off the bottom of the second page on mobile. That's how important that is.